イ様。
もう無理ですね。
分かってる。
Ever since replaying Final Fantasy XV and learning more about its messy development, I'd been wanting to play Type-0 just to see what else director Hajime Tabata could do outside of Noctis's convoluted journey. And when I booted up the game and witnessed its explosive intro for the first time, I was immediately invested and absolutely ready to devour its story. Sadly, nothing in the game ever comes close to that gut punch of an opening, but after playing through Type-0 twice now and getting the platinum for it, I can confidently say that this game is still worth your time. But like everything else related to Final Fantasy during the early 2010s, it comes with some significant caveats that are hard to overlook. So let's discuss the remarkable feats and serious flaws in Final Fantasy Type-0. Oh, but before we begin, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. That really helps me with the algorithm and guarantees that other poor souls can witness my shitty content. Let's go. If you are unfamiliar with Type-0, this is a spin-off Final Fantasy title which is part of the Fabula Nova Crystallis sub-series alongside the Final Fantasy XIII trilogy and 15. Well, sort of. 15 is definitely the emo black sheep in the family trying to distance itself from the concepts and ideas that are central to the Fabula Nova stuff. But really, they might not straight up say it, but are in Noctis and Luna l'Cie in a sense? Think about it for a second. Anyway, I'm rambling, let's focus on Type-0. Originally named Final Fantasy XIII Agito, Type-0 is a 2011 PSP action RPG that got a PS4 HD port in 2015, which is what I'm using as the basis for this review. In it, we follow a group of elite warriors who are also high school teenagers because why not? They are students at Academia, a magical academy from the Dominion of Rubrum, one of 4 crystal states in the world of Oriens. One of the other states, the Militesi Empire, is seeking to take control of the other 3 magical crystals, and they are willing to do unspeakable things to get what they want, including nuking one of the other states for their crystal, writing the first chapter of the story. Throughout Type-0, we are going to follow the 14 students of Class 0 as they take part in a series of military operations to stop Militesi and protect the Vermilion Bird, which is the name of their kingdom's crystal. Everything is presented as if it was part of a History Channel documentary on military history, which is pretty fun, I'm not gonna lie. If from this synopsis you're under the impression that this is sort of a mix between Final Fantasy VIII and XII because of the high school soldiers and the focus on military operations, well, you're exactly correct, that was my impression as well. Academia is pretty much Hogwarts if it were a Final Fantasy VIII garden, and I absolutely love it. The implementation of the Fabula Nova Crystallis stuff is also pretty neat, as the crystals are the ones that imbue humans with different focuses and turn them into l'Cie. So each crystal has their own l'Cie servants who are extremely powerful and serve as liaisons between the crystals and their respective nations. If you haven't played 13, just know that a l'Cie's whole deal revolves around completing their focus, i.e. the mission given by their master. If they complete this mission, they are immortalized in crystal form. If they don't, they become monsters. A distinction between 13 and Type-0 is the fact that in 13, l'Cie have a deadline to complete their focus, but that doesn't seem to be the case in Type-0. It seems like they have all the time in the world to complete the focus, meaning that they can even live longer lives than others because of this. The turning into a monster because you failed thing isn't really mentioned in the game, so I don't think it's part of the lore in Type-0. But l'Cie in it do lose their memories over time, so there's that. Oh, that's another key element in this one, memory. Because of the crystal's influence, everyone in Oriens automatically loses their memory of the deceased, so as not to be held back by grief. I at first thought this was something exclusive to Class 0 or at least to Academia cadets, so that they could focus on their missions without being affected by the loss of their comrades. But nope, this affects every living person in Oriens. I'll discuss this a little bit more when I touch on spoilers, but yeah, this is an important plot element in Type-0. And that's it, that's the setup. 4 warring crystal states with a bunch of magical military high schoolers. It's all pretty straightforward. Or at least it is on paper. The way the narrative is presented really makes everything overly convoluted and hard to understand, but we'll get to that. As was the case with Final Fantasy XV, the way the story in Type-0 is told really hurts the player's comprehension and the assimilation of important aspects of the narrative. Also, there are too many characters in this thing. There are 14 playable characters, all students in Academia's Class 0, and they are all introduced in the very first chapter of the game, most of them at once, right after the first mission is done with. Most key NPCs are also introduced at the beginning of the game without much fanfare, so from the get-go there are dozens of characters and regions and concepts for the player to get to know, and that makes things unnecessarily confusing. Like, the Dominion of Rubrum is overseen by the Consortium of 8, and early on there's a cutscene in which a bunch of members of the Consortium are discussing what they should do next. And I swear I thought 2 of the ladies in this committee were the same goddamn person, and I only found out that that was not the case when I checked the game's data log later on. And yes, just like in 13 and 15, this is a game in which you cannot avoid reading some data log entries. These are not there just for flavor and some background lore nonsense. They are needed if you want to have the slightest grasp of what's going on. And this confusion is not a problem exclusive to minor NPCs like the military ladies. It hurts the playable characters as well. I could not for the life of me figure out who was 9 or Jack in the beginning. Same goes for Deuce or Sync. For clarity, let's compare Type-0 with another Final Fantasy with a very large cast. Can you imagine if all 14 characters in Final Fantasy VI were presented all at once? Yeah, that would have made memorable characters lose their spark and sort of meld together, and would especially have hurt the minor characters in the party. And that's exactly what happens here. At first, all of the kids in Class 0 feel like carbon copies of each other, just a bunch of generic harem anime characters. And even by the end, after you've played the whole thing, most characters still feel very one-note, especially the guys. The girls at least are distinct enough personality and looks-wise that by the end you sort of know who they are. We have the cute and smart one, the cute and sick one, the cute and upbeat one, the cute and shy one, the cute and ditzy one, the cute and edgy one, and that's just Lightning from Final Fantasy XIII. The guys, on the other hand, I know Trey's the nerdy one, and I know there's the hot-headed one and the dumb one. However, I don't remember if that's Jack, Nine, or King, or if all of them are hot-headed and dumb. It's hard. However, I do have to say, the only 2 characters with any sort of depth are both guys, Ace and Machina. I guess you could say Ace is the protagonist, as he gets slightly more screen time than the other characters apart from Machina and Rem. And he's also the one on the box art and the game's representative character in the Cydia. But really, Type-0 wants you to see Class 0 as a whole as the game's protagonist. And there's nothing wrong with that, it's an ensemble after all. However, I feel like the cast would have had a better shot at winning over players and leaving a better first impression if they were introduced little by little. Type-0 could have used a longer introductory chapter with maybe 2 or even 3 extra missions just in Chapter 1, each one introducing 3 new Class 0 members. That way we could have gotten to know the characters a little bit better. Another issue with the story and how it is presented is the fact that too many plot points don't have a payoff. Our brains are trained to see random evidence as clues, and we expect everything to clearly come into play at some point in the narrative. because that's a basic storytelling principle that Chekhov's gun stuff. But that's not the case here. The story during your first playthrough is chock full of elements that, at best, are poorly explained and don't have a clear, satisfying conclusion, or, at worst, are straight up inconsequential. And then there's also stuff that shows up out of nowhere without any rhyme or reason. It's frustrating and oh so typical of Square Enix at that point in time. Among the stuff without any clear payoff or explanation, there's the Phantoma collecting, Ren's sickness, Cater's deja vu, Ace's relationship with Machina's brother, Aria's whole deal, Aresia's role in the story, the situation with Concordia's royalty in Chapter 4, and the whole of Chapter 8. All of these elements are poorly explained or require a full second playthrough to be sort of understood, which is frustrating. I feel like I really need to dive into spoilers to get my point across, so if you haven't played a game and would like to remain spoiler-free, just skip to the next chapter in this video using the timestamps below. Just know that, like Final Fantasy XV, this is one of those games that are not self-sufficient and only really make sense if you read a wiki. So the game is actually pretty straightforward for the majority of its duration. The first 7 out of 8 chapters follow the Warring Orients without much issue, with one crystal state falling in Chapter 1 and another in 5. Meanwhile, Class 0 has some minor friction with Machina, who is there to pretty much spy on them for one of those consortium dudes who hates Aresia because she's an asshole. She's a motherly figure for the kids, but it's clear to anyone that she sees them as balls and nothing more. Within Class 0, Machina holds a grudge against Ace because he was directly responsible for the death of his brother, who was that dude in the game's opening. But that doesn't really add to the narrative all that much. After all, Machina cannot remember his brother. It feels like he just thinks these actions reflect poorly on Ace's character and Class 0 as a whole. As the story progresses, Machina gets pissier, and the war bloodier as some characters close to Class 0 kick the bucket, like their bland CEO Kurasame and some lessee no one cares about. Finally, Militesi falls in Chapter 7, and with the knowledge that the game's got 8 chapters, you just know a twist is coming. There's even some stuff that seems like foreshadowing in the early chapters, stuff that suggests the following possible scenarios for the ending. A. The consortium will decide they don't need Class 0 anymore and will try to turn the tables against the cadets, and the final chapter will be about Academia versus Class 0. B. Aresia will be revealed as the big bad who was using Academia all along to destroy the world or some generic shit like that, and now Class 0 will have to rebel against Mother. She's evil enough, so that could be it. These seemed consistent and overall satisfying conclusions. What we do get, however, is none of that. C. Whoopsie. The apocalypse is here as the evil Ursus show up to destroy the world. Okay, what the fuck is a Ursus? I'm not mad at the twist per se, I just think it isn't telegraphed enough. I don't know, just show some cutscenes early on with Class 0 learning about the verses and how they are a myth and many don't think they exist or whatever. I swear these things aren't mentioned anywhere in the game before Chapter 8. And the little context we get is presented in this shit cutscene, which is interrupted by gameplay with a level 99th enemy who's trying to kill you. I honestly thought the game was crashing and did not pay attention to the cutscene at all. But no, that shit's intentional. This is just terrible storytelling. Anyway, this game, Sid, who was the Militesi leader, takes control of Pandemonium and of the verses for reasons, and he will put Class 0 through a series of trials because, sure, why not? Amidst the trials, the Vermilion Birds get antsy and offers everyone the choice to become lessee so they can protect the crystal. I obviously declined because really every possible outcome for a lessee is shit, no thank you. Rem, however, accepts it I don't even know why she wasn't in my party anymore, but she's the Vermilion Bird's Lassie now, while Machina is the Militesi Crystal's one. They fight, Machina wins, and then he gets sad because he killed Rem or whatever. But hey, lucky him, that was his focus, and also hers. And now they have both been immortalized in crystal form together. Man, these crystals get off on some sick shit. After that, the rest of Class 0 go through the early 2010s mandatory "I'm badly injured, so I'll walk really slowly even though my HP bar is full" section. Type-0 innovates by having Sid berate us while we're at it. Sid then transforms into his final form and insta-kill us, but worry not, Machina and Rem will help us through the power of friendship, and now we are invincible and just have to get a breakside hit with each character to beat Sid. Weird final boss battle, man. You can't lose. Anyway, with Sid dead, Class 0 magically returns to the ruins of academia, and now they are preparing to die? Why are they gonna die? Why are they back at academia? Who fucking knows? The kids all die piled around a Rubum flag display, and Machina and Rem aren't crystallized anymore, and somehow remember all of them even though memories don't exist in this universe. The end. What? So all of the characters die at the same time out of nowhere. Why? It's confusing and weird and just feels unnecessary. The intro suggests that anyone can die at any point, sure, but that doesn't seem to apply to Class 0 throughout the whole game. And funnily, all of them dying at once after having a nice chat together just cheapens the ending. The opening with Machina's brother dying is much more emotional, even though we'd never seen him before. It would have been more moving if we lost some of the kids along the way. The kids also all die without having any sort of character arc. They still all love Mother, they don't question the consortium all that much, they all don't question the memory thing, they don't rebel. Also, the "we forget the dead" thing, which to me was one of this game's major selling points, doesn't really get worked on all that much. When Class 0 said, "we don't remember the dead" in the beginning of the game, I thought that applied only to the soldiers, which was much more interesting and cruel. It sounded like a military commander's wet dream because the soldiers would focus on their mission without being distracted by their memories and who they have lost. Knowing that this is widespread and everyone in Orience lives like that, what's the point? No one knows what mourning the dead means. That robs the story of a powerful and ruthless setup. I don't know, I expected more out of this idea. I thought the suppression of memories in some characters was going to crack. I actually was dead certain that 10 was missing because he or she had already died and people forgot about them. After all, that was the only deck card missing when you look at the name of the characters in Class 0. Machina and Rem don't really count because they are there to spy on the rest. Anyway, at the end of my first playthrough, I was disappointed in Type-0. Very little made sense. Things felt rushed and illogical. However, I did hear the game warrants a second playthrough, and in that one, things would make more sense. The fact the save files always inform you how many times you have finished the story corroborated these claims, so there I went to playthrough number 2. Throughout most of my second playthrough, not much changed. The beginning was a little more palatable, as I was now familiar with all of the characters and regions. I was also better at fighting and controlling the characters, so combat was mostly a breeze. However, starting with Chapter 2, a new mechanic popped up. At specific points, I was given the option to follow a different route than the one presented in the first playthrough. One that would invariably be more challenging and would also introduce more character development, more cutscenes, and crucially, more context to the game's real plot. It is only in a second playthrough that the idea of spirals is properly explained. It becomes clear to the player that Arecia is experimenting with the world of Orience and is collecting Phantoma to activate a gate or whatever. She's reset the world hundreds of millions of times to achieve her goal. We also get to see 2 extra characters, Tiz and Joker, who finally complete the deck of cards in Class 0. They apparently acquire the ability to remember the dead at some point, and because of that, can't really be in Class 0 with the others because that would defeat the purpose of Aresia's experiment, I guess. The idea of the game repeating itself infinitely is actually pretty fun and meta, and makes replaying Type-0 feel like another spiral beginning and ending. I really enjoyed that. Still, there are things that aren't properly explained. Why is Sid killing himself before becoming a monster in this new ending? Who is he even talking to? How does Aresia reboot the timeline? Is it even her doing this? Why would there be a spiral in which academia isn't a military school? Why is Ace a samurai all of a sudden? None of it is explained. Even with more context, the story is still poorly told in-game, and a wiki remains necessary to get the full picture of what's going on. And really, I don't think I have to say this, but we shouldn't need to read a wiki to understand what we are playing. And it's tiring that so much of the Fabula Nova Crystallis sub-series isn't self-sufficient. Ironically, the original 13 is probably the most straightforward game of them all, and many still see it as a narrative disaster. Let me repeat, even if the story makes more sense with the extra cutscenes seen in the second playthrough, this game continues to be a victim of some pretty terrible storytelling, which is typical of an unchecked Square Enix team that thinks a Notimania guide is the solution to any story fuck-up. That, however, does not fly with me. A story should be self-sufficient when experienced for the first time. A second one should only make things more obvious and maybe clear up something you didn't get the first time around. Think of any whodunit ever. We watch or read or play these stories a second time because then it will be obvious what were red herrings and what were actual and sometimes obvious clues to the identity of our killer. The spiral idea is great, and I would have loved to see Type-0 get a proper sequel with Samurai Ace, but that doesn't change the fact that the story in Type-0 is messy and asks a lot of the player to be properly understood. And even after a second playthrough, there are essential plot points which you won't get without a wiki. To me, that's inexcusable. If the game fumbles its storytelling, the real-time action-based gameplay on the other hand is a major win. It's a much more complex affair than 15 for instance, which is interesting because it is known that Tabata and many devs from Type-0 were assimilated by the 15 team after Type-0 dropped to help out with the implementation of the real-time action thing. And somehow the combat in 15 isn't really an evolution from what was offered in Type-0. Type-0 is much better. Like in 15, you can only control one character at a time, with the other 2 active party members being AI controlled. However, you can switch between characters with a tap of a button, just like in 7 Remake for instance. Furthermore, each one of the 14 characters in Class 0 has a unique weapon and skills, and the combat is based around dodging and timed attacks. When a perfect dodge is carried out, characters are given the opportunity to perform attacks that deal high damage to an enemy or straight up kill them, depending on the color of the symbol that briefly appears on the screen. The high level damage one is called Break Sight and is represented by a yellow symbol, while the insta-kill one is called Kill Sight and is represented by a red symbol. This mechanic makes battles really fast-paced and dynamic, while also rewarding players for precision and accuracy. I feel like all of this would have made the combat in 15 really pop, and now I'm wondering why none of this made its way onto that game. Anyway, you still have summons and triad maneuvers to aid you in battles so as to spice things up, and there are also some extra timed challenges which pop up when you're in battle, which are called SOs. These can give you extra items and rewards if performed correctly, or they can kill your main character on the spot if you fail. So accepting these is a high-risk, high-reward approach, and completing all of them can be a major undertaking if you seriously want to master the game. There's a lot of complexity here, and getting familiar with every character and their specific skills can take multiple playthroughs. I especially enjoyed playing with the ranged characters like King, Ace, Trey, and Cater, and even after my platinum, I feel like I have only scratched the surface of what this battle system has to offer. The gameplay in Type-0 alternates between missions and downtime. If you are familiar with the Persona games, you immediately get what's happening. Between main missions, you will usually be given a couple of days to relax in academia and do some side stuff, like breeding chocobos, talking with other students, fulfilling side quests, and also attending lectures with Class Zero's resident Moogle. I'll be honest, I was a little bummed out by the lack of complexity in the activities and the lack of role-play opportunities within academia. The main missions, however, made up for it. They have this roguelite energy that truly works with the setting. So, you start missions with every character available to you, but if one of them dies, there's no Phoenix down. They're done for that dungeon and can only be revived after you're done. So if you get to the boss with only 3 people, that's all you've got. This is actually a great design decision that really makes missions exciting and feel truly dangerous, because you never know how long they're going to be, when there's going to be a save point, or one of those glowing healing things on the floor. Should you use an elixir or an ether now, or should you save these items for the next room? If you botch the beginning of a mission and lose too many members at once, should you just abort the mission, or should you try to move forward? The fact that characters die and can't return until the mission is over will inevitably force you to use all of Class 0 members, and that has an interesting effect. I, for instance, wasn't really playing with Sync all that much. She was always AI controlled in the field when I took her with me just for the XP, but I got to the end of a mission in Chapter 5 with her and her alone, and she was able to take down the boss on her own. After that, I had a newfound appreciation for the character and didn't really mind her zany antics anymore. So yeah, the main missions are great, and wrapping up a mission that you were underleveled for and seeing the report card with awful scores all around is a lot of fun. The game also has some side missions akin to real-time strategy battles, but these are so simple that actually calling them strategy battles is overselling it a bit. You just have to follow the directions given by Class Zero's Moogle, and you're gonna be fine. It's still interesting enough, I guess. You have to liberate cities dominated by the Militesi Empire to expand Rubum's territory, which really helps bring this military fantasy to life. Finally, there are some inane fetch quests that you can complete for people around academia, but hey, this is an 8-year-old port of a 12-year-old JRPG made for a handheld device. It comes with the territory. All in all, Type-0 has a fun battle system and an outstanding mission structure. The gameplay completely makes up for any story shortcomings. There are too many loading screens when walking around the school, which, is a relic of the game's PSP origins. You would have hoped this could have been remedied somehow in this port, but oh well. The same goes for the original CGI cutscenes, which all have this grainy look and now seem out of place when compared to the rest of the game. They're still nice to look at, mind you, but they do feel out of place. The character design is pretty solid and among Nomura's best, although some characters do suffer from nonsense anime hair because Nomura can't control himself. The soundtrack is really great. I had never heard of Takeharu Ishimoto before, but some of his original tracks for the game are outstanding. You should definitely check it out if you haven't. Spending AP points and improving spells with the Autocrysterian Creepy Giant book are both a chore. The menus are too slow and you have to confirm too much crap to finish a single action, which is annoying. There really should have been a button for automatic AP leveling up. Oh, I was raving about the gameplay earlier on in the video, but you should know that grinding is inevitable, as the recommended levels increase sometimes unreasonably between main missions, and the only way to get XP is fighting hordes of the same monsters again and again and again. The Northern Corridor will feel like a second home after a while. That Moogle could really teach more lessons focused on XP. But again, this is an 8-year-old port of a 12-year-old game. You've got to cut Type-0 some slack. I now have the Platinum for Type-0. I've played through the whole thing twice, and yeah, it's hard to explain how I feel about the game. It's a mixed bag, but a charming and compelling one at that, with addictive gameplay and an intriguing scenario full of visually iconic elements and characters to boot. Its narrative can be messy, frustrating and hard to follow due to unnecessary exposition dumps of things that are inconsequential to the main plot and the lack of explanation of elements that are actually crucial to the game's storyline. A seeming inevitability for a game which is part of the Fabula Nova Datalog subseries, and apparently also an inevitability for a Hajime Tabata game. Still, I now have a real fondness for Type-0. The more I think about it, the more I like it. Recommending a title whose story only makes sense when played twice might be a hard sell for many, but if you're a JRPG fan, especially a Final Fantasy fan, Type-0 will be a fun time, and the train wreck aspects of the story might not even bother you. I've seen people online who actually find it charming. Who knows, this might be just a game for you. And there you have it, people. Have you played Type-0? Did you enjoy it? Let me know in the comments down below. Also make sure to leave a like, and I'd love it if you subscribed as well. See you around YouTube, folks.